Cyte-09 is broken. Now I know what you are thinking. Yes, you are tired of hearing every YouTuber praising every new frame to be broken and all that nonsense. While yes, Cyte-09 is very good, I don't think he's broken, he's just good. And I think that he is a very niche frame, but we will get into that in this video later on. That's not why I think he's broken. It's because of this right here. His third ability, Evade, which is invisibility. And it is also his Helminth Subsume, which effectively means any Warframe can go invisible. Yes, you are currently looking at a Curlover who is invisible, and no, not through your companion like Shade or through other avenues. This may not seem crazy, but think about it. Any Warframe that usually struggles to stay alive essentially has a very good way of, well, staying alive now. Anyway, let's actually talk about the frame on the pedestal today, which is Cyte-09. As always, let's begin with where to farm him. You will need to complete the new Hex quest to receive his blueprint. Then you'll have to visit Amir in the Halvania Central Mall to acquire his blueprints from Amir's offerings. Or you can complete bounties from the bounty board for a chance at Cyte-09's blueprints. Or, of course, you can simply whip out your favorite plastic rectangle and buy him with platinum. Now let's move on to his abilities, and of course we're going to be talking about his passive first. Weak point kills increase Cyte-09's weak point critical strike chance by 1% up to 300% for the duration of the mission. So basically this passive is really useful for endurance missions where you can essentially get 300 headshots in a mission to gain 300% crit chance against headshots. Which honestly is cool, but for a general quick mission, it's alright, you will still gain some benefit from it, but not to the extent that you would like. I personally think this should scale quicker instead of 1%, I think 1% is a bit low. And now we move on to his first ability, which is called Seek. Plant an antenna that projects a forward scan in a cone. Enemies that are detected by the antenna take increased headshot damage and will also become visible through walls. And on top of this, your weapon gains an insane amount of punch through, as in a lot of punch through. It's free wall hacks essentially. You can have up to 3 antennas at a time, and if you scale ability range, your punch through is increased. This is a very powerful ability when you want to fully maximize the potential of headshots, and also pairing it with his fourth ability, which we will go over in a second. His second ability is called Resupply. Resupply surprised me and disappointed me at the same time. In fact, Resupply made me very sad actually. This ability allows you to throw 2 elemental ammo packs. You will hold the ability down and simply choose the exact element you want, and it will load your current magazine with the element that you have chosen and the status effects. When you reload, it will clear the effect. Sniper rifles will also benefit from this and gain more damage. Now you're probably asking, why does this ability make me sad? It sounds pretty overpowered, right? Because the elemental damage from this ability does not carry over to incarnate magazines. I know, yes, it would have been overpowered and broken, I am aware, but it's wishful thinking, okay? And for the cherry on top, it doesn't work with battery weapons like the Cyclone, which makes me even more depressed. But again, I understand. For other weapons like snipers or normal weapons with bigger magazines, it's a very good ability, allowing you to gain an extra element that you were missing on your build. And it boosts your fourth ability like crazy. It is pretty important to know that you can have a different elemental pickup on each of your weapons and your exalted weapons. So if you wanted, let's say, viral on your primary, cold on your secondary, and blast on your exalted weapon, you could do that. And you and your allies will have your own instance of pickup so no one can steal them, and you can deploy up to 6 ammo packs at a time. Up next, we have his third ability, which is called Evade. Now this is the spotlight right here. Jump backwards and become invisible for a short duration. When you kill enemies with headshots, it will extend the duration of Evade and will also heal Cyte-09. But this one is a little bit more complex than normal abilities. There is a base cooldown of 60 seconds. So when you cast it at, let's say, the base duration of 10 seconds, when that 10 seconds runs out and you don't extend that 10 seconds, you'll have a 50-second cooldown. If you manage to stay invisible for longer than the base 60-second cooldown after casting the ability, when the ability runs out, you don't have a cooldown, you could just recast it. So the ability cooldown is basically just running in the background. Not only that, Evade will also remove status effects when you cast it, and Evade will ignore the shield regen delay for you, meaning that your shield will immediately start regenerating after you cast it. So it's a juiced invisibility skill. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this is his Helminth subsume, which is just absolutely insane. The only thing about the Helminth version is that it caps at 25 seconds as the max duration, which is somewhat okay, as you will need to rely on getting headshots to increase that duration. Let's move on to our fourth ability, which is called Neutralize. This makes use of Neutralizer, which is his Exalted sniper rifle. Your bullets will ricochet off of headshots and seek out nearby enemies' heads. So it's just headshots all around. It also has an alt fire that lobs a cold grenade that will completely freeze enemies, as well as leaving a freezing zone that will continue to apply cold status effects for 5 seconds. Your sniper will have a damage multiplier that actually scales with ability strength. And on top of all of this, your headshots will ricochet up to 4 times to nearby enemies. However, your fourth ability does count as a channeled ability that will drain your energy per shot. So be sure to mod for efficiency if you feel like you're running low on energy the whole time. Remember I mentioned earlier that your first and second ability will boost your fourth ability? Well, your first will give your sniper even more headshot damage and will also give you insane punch through. Resupply will increase your sniper's damage and will also allow your neutralizer to have any element that you see fit. Now when you build your sniper correctly, fancy blast, do you? How about gas? Or how about a viral hunting munitions that will spread to nearby enemies with a ricochet? You get the point here. Because your sniper does so much damage, any element applied is very powerful, which is why your first and second is really good if you want to make use of your fourth ability often and would like to focus on it. That concludes the abilities. Before we go into how to play Cyte-09 and the general gameplay loop, if I could ask that you hit that like button, it only takes a second and it goes a super long way for me. Thank you so much, my lovely individual. How do you play Cyte-09 in general missions? When you start your mission, you want to cast your invisibility when enemies start spawning. This will keep you alive and also allow you to gain those headshots to keep the duration of evade up. Then cast your first ability in the direction of your enemies. This will allow you to kill enemies through walls, gain a bunch of punch through, and also increase your headshot damage as well. Or you can cast them and move around the enemies, just make sure that your antennas are scanning the enemies that you are killing. Cast your second ability and choose the element you see fit. This is really up to you. There is no best element here per se, it's all dependent on what you want and how you modded your weapons and so on. But if you do want my suggestions, I can confidently say running blast with the sniper is disgusting. And not only that, gas as well is also very, very powerful since its damage is so high. But the damage over time effects from gas is really strong too, and viral always works. Corrosive is also a godly element to run against armored enemies. And of course, we finally have our fourth ability, which we'll be keeping up for the most part if you want to focus on that. And that's it, really. Just keep recasting your second ability and make sure your invisibility is up, and honestly, you're good to go. Cyte isn't the most active frame. Technically, he's more of a sitting in a corner behind your scanners type of playstyle, which is fine. It doesn't necessarily make him bad, it just means it's more for people who like that type of playstyle. Me personally, I would try anything I can to make him a bit more active or play him differently, so I wouldn't be sitting in a corner and just basically blowing up enemies. It's just kind of boring after a while, it gets a bit stale. Like I said, Cyte isn't broken, he's just good. So this wraps up how we play Cyte-09 as a no Helminth playstyle. Now how do we go about building him? We will go over how to build Cyte-09 and then we'll go over how to build his Exalted weapon after that. In my opinion, Cyte needs a balanced setup, a mix of everything. His abilities scale well with duration and range. Added strength is really good for scaling the headshot damage from your first and fourth ability. I do like to run streamlined to have more efficiency so our fourth ability doesn't drain our energy too much. For the mods we would go for, if you are a newer player and are in the Starchart, you can run a simple setup like this, just with 4 mods, just to test out Cyte-09 before you start progressing and investing into him. Then when you get further on, you can run a full Starchart build as follows. This is a balanced setup that makes it really easy to play Cyte-09. We then move on to a Steelpath setup. For the mods, I went for Flow for energy, Equilibrium for energy sustain, Rolling Guard as an oh shit button, Stretch for more range, Umbral Intensify, Continuity for duration, Augur Message for more duration, and then Streamline for more energy efficiency. This is optional, although you can switch it out for focusing on another stat if you see fit. For me, this is a perfect, comfy Steelpath setup when it comes to the mods. For the Aura slot, you can run Brief Respite, Growing Power, or Deadeye for more sniper damage, that works too. For the arcanes, I would recommend running augmented for that extra 60% strength, and if you would like, you can go efficiency for more duration. This right here is the perfect Steelpath setup for me. A non-helmet setup that just is very comfortable and it just works. Before we move on to the helmet setups, let's talk about his exalted weapon, the Neutralizer. This exalted weapon is actually very good, and it does a shit ton of damage. It's a sniper with very good crit damage scaling and does mainly puncture. Like I mentioned in the ability section, this sniper has an alternate fire that lobs icy grenades, which will leave a freezing zone that will continue to apply cold status effects. Yes, I know what you're thinking, Shivering Contagion. And yes, you are correct, it synergizes with your second ability as well. But that's later. How do we mod the sniper for a general setup? It's the usual, to be honest. We go multi-shot, crit damage, crit chance, and then we go for something a little different though. Semi-rifle cannonade. It's actually really good for this weapon and honestly makes sense. Now, even though this weapon does have innate slash, it's a single fire weapon with a bit of multi-shot and good crit but terrible status chance. Because the rifle ricochets and hits 4 other targets, running hunting munitions actually makes a lot of sense and works very well, since you can actually get viral from your second ability, and the raw damage is so good that when it does proc, it's just huge bleed ticks. Rifle Elementalist and a Bane to boost those procs works very well. For the last slot, this is up to you. Hammer Shot if you have it, Vigilante Armament, a different status effect, or Radiated Reload, that works too. However, there are brand new mods as well, which will increase the amount of headshot damage, which will lock the multi-shot for you, which is not ideal in my personal opinion. I don't really like the new mods. But anyway, play around to what you like, and this is a Starchart setup that you can use as a budget or make a budget, whichever works for you. The Steelpath version will have the Galvanized Chamber mod, and then we will add Galvanized Aptitude to the setup to scale the damage even more. These two setups are just built for raw damage, and you will hit for millions of damage when pairing this with your skills. But we can actually drop hunting munitions or a Bane and run Shivering Contagion instead, which will spread the status effects that you add to your magazine from your second ability. Alternatively, you could drop a few mods, build for elements, and then add Shivering Contagion in, and it will still pair with your second ability to add a new element to spread even more if you see fit. An example template would look something like this. Remember, the elements I would suggest from your second ability would be Gas, Blast, and Viral. Those work extremely well with this weapon. And that concludes building your exalted weapon for Cyte-09. These setups will carry over to your Helminth setups unless you change around to your specific site build. Okay, let's finally move on to the Helminth setups. The gameplay loop and everything will pretty much stay the same, but of course the builds may differ depending on what you helmet. Now you're probably asking, which ability would I suggest subsuming? This all depends on what you want to use Cyte for. I find it can be your first ability so that you can subsume, let's say, an armor shipping ability or a grouping ability to boost your exalted weapon. Or you can subsume over your second with something like Raw or Eclipse, since you can only have one damage ability at a time, and it does lock you to only subsuming off your second ability. Because remember, Resupply also gives you extra damage, so keep this in mind when you subsume something off. For the first playstyle that I would recommend is any of the armor stripping abilities. This is very good for increasing the damage from your exalted weapon with, let's say, imbuing gas into your magazine capacity. I went for a Phantomize because I really like the slow effect it gives as well, but if you want something more instant, then Pillage or Terrify will work. Just be sure to change around the setup. This is my Phantomize build right here. Next we have a Raw setup, which you have to sadly subsume off your second. You will lose the elemental choice, but you will have big damage if you, let's say, mod for a viral hunting munition setup on your exalted weapon. Next we have a Pool Helminth playstyle, which you can subsume any pool ability onto your first and then basically just blast your enemies into a new dimension. It would look something like this. And that concludes all of the Helminth builds. I'll be honest, once again, I much prefer his base kit. It works very well together, and subsuming is a bit awkward, put it that way. Lastly, we have our Archon Shards for him. I would say casting speed shards would be really nice with him, and duration or strength to fill in some stats that you are missing. And of course, parkour velocity always wins. If you really like snipers, then you will absolutely love Cyte-09. He's just a roided sniper user essentially, but I don't think that he's broken and he's the next best Warframe and he's that strong and whatever. He's good. He's niche in a way. I will be attempting to take him to level cap, and my opinion on him will probably change as I test him more. But yeah, for my first thoughts, he's good. I mainly care about his Helminth subsume evade going on any other Warframe. If you are struggling to mod your weapons, then check out my guide on how to make any weapon in Warframe OP. This guide is for everyone in Warframe, so you will probably learn something here. As always, a huge thank you to all of our amazing channel members, and a special thank you to Momokia, Darwin, Fish, Joshua, Caden, Shakiro, Ayrton Yard, Tythrax, and Noob Phoenix. You guys are amazing. Okay, bye. Enjoying shit up with the sniper. Bye, bye. Thank you for watching. Cool. Thank you. Next video is coming soon. Bye.